G'day everyone, it's James Davis from the Pax8 Academy again, and this time I've got Charlie from Rewst. Thanks for joining me, Charlie.
Thanks, James. I appreciate you taking the time with me.
Where are you based?
I'm in New Jersey, U.S., so New Jersey's right next to New York. I think everyone will know New York, may not know New Jersey in the
We're
States.
opposite sides of the world, and I appreciate you joining me. And I'm really excited about this topic. It's one of the things that is so close to my heart with process automation. And um, we'll dive in like normal. I'll throw you a hard question to start off with: is what does RPA stand for?
So, as you know, we love our acronyms, right? So, RPA is Robotics Processing Automation. I think the best way to look at that for an MSP, and it's certainly the way I look at it, is just an automation platform.
Uh, And why is that becoming so prominent these days in the industry? It's a term that's being bounced around a lot. Why?
I think once you start seeing people have interest in it, then, I think, you've been doing this long enough. Vendors are great at this. As soon as somebody comes up with the latest kind of hot thing to talk about, everyone thinks they're doing it or can do it. And, frankly, it's a good way to get people interested looking at your technology and website, even if you don't. But I think the biggest thing is just, the fact that, it's certainly not something that should be new to anybody. It's really hard to find good talent. So I think good's one thing, and then the other thing is just keeping that talent, especially as we grow. So it's definitely this supply and demand on the resources, and it's a way for people to figure out how do they take some of the kind of that you know the chunk of the day to day that's frankly is very monotonous. How do they take that off and leverage automation to go do it?
Yeah, it's a good point about the talent. I know we all know the salary pressures that are out there, and our margins are getting squeezed big time as TSPs and MSPs, and we can't find people to fill it. So that monotonous work is it's a bit drudgery for a lot of people. So what are some examples that you've seen of using RPA to automate away those sort of monotonous jobs?
Yeah, it's definitely the things like onboarding, offboarding. Those are big things. As well as you look at everybody has a somebody to go in and look at the tickets, right? Especially if you're a larger shop, you have somebody go in, look at those, disposition the tickets for you, right? That is a very it's a very monotonous job, right? You're going in every day. Those people, may not be as technical, but certainly have more emotional intelligence, so they could go look at those things. But it is something. It's like every day you're doing the same thing over and over again. So we see a lot of those things coming up. So it's just for us, we're looking at this as a way to certainly provide automation. Automation's not new. RPA is not a new term. But I think that was always something that everyone felt you needed to be an enterprise and have a very big budget to go do it. So that's one of the things that we thought about is, how do we get that down to use, who could use it better than MSPs, which are always, we're always kind of, like you said, we're under resourced, and a lot of it is just to do the fact that it's the cost and it's the talent pool as well is challenging. But I think if you take some of those annoying, repetitive tasks and let these folks go and do something more fun and what they want to do, I think your retention rate should actually go up with your talent as well.
So with that in mind, how should you look at rolling out a RPA platform? How do you do that successfully?
So I think you need to have somebody that's going to be that champion, right? Somebody that's going to at least own it. And that doesn't mean that they need to be the person that's, coming up with all the automations, building everything out. But you need someone that at least takes a chunk of their time and they say, we're going to go and do this. And so they could be, project manager. They could be somebody that's, the person that's building your PowerShell scripts today. But it's just somebody that's going to be able to look at what your processes are today and look to see, where can you make efficiencies in those processes by leveraging automation.
What should you be looking at to measure success with with automation? Because obviously we're we're techies, we can get caught up in shiny tools, and what you just said there around having that sort of champion. How would you guide them to be successful at rolling this stuff out?
So I think there's the old adage, and I think this hopefully this works down in your neck of the woods. But it's I don't know if everyone's asked how do you eat an elephant, right? And it's one bite at a time. I think looking at those small wins first to measure success. Like me personally, I wouldn't start out with something like onboarding and an offboarding because a lot of times, even the MSP they don't have that full process actually documented. A lot of that is, especially if you're talking about things that you can't necessarily automate that are more manual. Um, I would start with some of the more low hanging fruit, things like, you know, time based admin access, let's say, where, you could go in and you could basically have a form fill that if you need access to my machine, James, you would go in, you'd put the information in, you'd get an approval, you'd have access. When you're done, we'd actually roll back all of those your privileges, but we'd also audit everything. So that may be something that could save time. But certainly you could do all these things, but just showing those wins, and then not I don't know how some other tools work, but certainly with Rewst, you could measure the time that you saved by each automation. And then we will also make sure that we tabulate how many times you've run it. So at least from your standpoint, if you're the person that's owning that champion, you could go back to management and say, by the way, I've saved, 100 hours this month. And so it shows some success. It puts you in a position where you control what the ROI measurement is. So if you decide that, hey, an hour of, my time is $25, you know, or Aussie dollars, you could just go in, look at that, and determine, hey, if I save that, I'm saving 2,500 a month right out of the get go. And that's what we see. People that kind of get stuck into it a bit. Once they see success, it's almost contagious. They're like, well, I could go fix this and I could go fix that. But the big thing is understanding not only what your processes are, but then also being able to leverage your PSA or how you manage your tickets to look at which of them. It's very easy to find out, like, which tickets do we see the most of. Can we automate that to make sure that we don't have a manual touch to all that? Those are just some
You,
ideas.
you mentioned a bit earlier in that having the processes documented out and using the onboarding, that there's stuff that can't necessarily be automated. Does that mean you throw that process in the bin and don't worry about automating, or how
No,
should you look at that?
absolutely not. It's the other way of looking at it. Is you look at what I mean. In process, always scares people because then they think of this bigger thing, right? You and I could sit here now and we could walk through a process on something, and I could scribble it on a notepad, take a screenshot of it, send it over to you, and now we have a new process. Same thing with onboarding is you may determine that you're gonna break that up into 5 different pieces for onboarding, and let's say you had something specifically that is that's manual, where there is no way for you to order something, just through leveraging the cloud. So like for Pax8, for example, if it happens to be a license that we physically have to send in, put in a PO for, you could actually set up a ticket right within the PSA using automation. So even though that bit may not be automated, you could automate the whole process and make sure you don't miss anything. And ultimately, it's going to make the your end customer's experience better.
And through that, make your operations a lot more consistent as well. That's probably one of
That
the big issues that I see is not just the time it takes to do things manually, it's the amount of mistakes and the amount of different ways people do it.
Yeah, and as we know, as a technology guy, you know that your best day will be you don't hear from any of your partners or customers. They won't call and tell you did a great job, but it just all worked how they feel it was designed. And that's really the ultimate goal, is to make sure that we put our partners in a position to hit SLAs. It's also that continuity, as you said. We were talking about just keeping headcount. If you have this consistency built in, now you're not really worried about, hey, the guy that built all the PowerShell scripts is gone. What do we do? How do we go and fix that?
It's a big thing. It's probably one of the big blockers to a lot of the smaller companies, especially, is that sort of key man risk, key person risk. Having a clever person that's done all this stuff in the back end and no one else knows what it is. So having that platform that's more visible and governed brings another level of professionalism, and it spreads that risk, or mitigates that risk, I suppose.
That's absolutely right.
Spoken a lot about setting things up for success. What have you seen typically that are blockers for partners to start doing the RPA successfully? What gets in their way?
I think some people do get caught up on process. I've had people say, "Oh, we don't have processes in place. We don't have an SLA." And I think the one thing that in talking to them, and it's not meant to be anything but kind of an obvious thing you point out, is that your competitors, what if they have a process in place, and what if they have SLAs in place? So I think most people understand that. The other thing that we always hear is time. I have a certain amount of resources. Now this is something else that we have to go do. One of the ones that really push past that are the ones that get into it and then they recognize that we've just saved so many hours. And it really is that, what's my investment to go save this amount of time? If I put in 5 hours, do I ultimately save 10 every month? Is that valuable?
It's a very different mindset, isn't it? It's that change from that reactive, let's just fix things when it's broken as fast as we possibly can, compared to slow down to speed up mentality. And I think most MSPs that I've seen are still stuck in that break fix mentality. We've just fixed priced our IT support, and we haven't actually evolved into that proper mature managed service that's focusing on reducing tickets, stopping them from being created in the first place. When it's just a very different environment, very different mindset. So how do you change that mindset? Because I think it's more emotional from the reactive side, and what we're talking about is very ROI logical driven.
Yeah, so I think one of the things is that we personally have a strong community in doing that. So you get to talk to people that are in the same position that you're in. So the people that decided to take that risk and push forward, right? So you're able to talk to people that are showing some success. The other thing that I think resonates with a lot of folks is understanding that most MSPs are people that have had to over periods of time picked up so many different skill sets, right? I mean, you if we just look at the vendors alone, vendor sprawl is you wind up learning all these different technologies, and a lot of them are starting to look at if I could become an automation person or automation expert, that's just something else that I can leverage and put on a resume, especially with the way we're kind of looking at this is the way that people thought about RMM. What they're thinking about automation, anybody that's been around for a minute knows that RMM people were very hesitant. What do we do, how to do it, and I think we could all agree that has changed the game for MSPs and how they grow their business, how do they manage things. Anybody that's kind of rolled the truck out to go fix something knows, if you're old enough to do that, knows how much those tools have been life changing. So I think
It's
this is just the next thing.
I, and it's a good point about the RMM side. Like, we guys have been around in the industry long enough remember all the promises about the RMMs being able to look after 6, 7, 800 plus endpoints per tech, and we all know how well that worked. But seeing this sort of level of automation and the things that you're talking about, it can do as just end user onboarding. Um, that's the majority of our tickets that are coming in, is those kind of levels of tickets. So if we're able to automate most or the majority of those, um, that is going to become more of a reality of that sort of endpoint to tech ratio. So when people are looking at this as a platform and looking at it in that sort of RMM mindset, what should they be looking at in terms of what sort of platform they should use, what sort of technology, all the sort of shiny stuff that we get excited about? What should we be looking at?
Yeah, so I definitely think making sure, the one thing that I think RMMs did well, and, it took time to evolve, just like anything else that's new that's out there, and they still do it great today, is they give you the ability to automate a task. And so I think, to your point about, we thought this was going to be, game changing, right? Instead of it being, 50 to 100 endpoints, we were going to be able to go to 800 that I could manage if I was on that side of it. You definitely need to make sure that they're going to be able to automate those processes, because without that, it still comes these like little bits of tasks that you're not stringing together. So there's always the ability to be able to fail. The other thing that make sure that they have some proper training, because it is going to be a bit of a different mindset, and that's why I said having a champion is definitely a good thing, right? And looking for the obvious things when you start looking at tickets. I think we could all say it'd be easy enough to go into our PSA, look at here's the one, here's the number of tickets that we're getting for each one of these issues. I think that's easy enough to find out. But how do you take it to the next level, right? And really make some operational changes and efficiencies. And so that's where the other thing that we've done is we built out a marketplace with. We just released another 51 last week, but we have well over 100 already pre-built automations. And most of that's just to put you in a position to get you to start thinking. Like I joined here in January, and I was shocked. In my background, been in the MSP space for quite a bit. Was an SC at one point, moved over to the dark side in sales. But I know that there's always the risk when someone asks a question that you may have to say no, that you can't do something. And frankly, I don't know many times that we have to say no, that we couldn't do something. Most of the time it's like, hey, geez, we never thought about doing that. So let's work through it and figure it out. So I think that's just making sure that what you're buying is going to be a bit dynamic, because all of our businesses are different. We use different RMMs, we do different PSAs, different day-to-day tools. And so just making sure that whatever platform or whatever direction you decide to go, that you have that ability, and it's more in your control as opposed to just something you're kind of pulling off the shelf, and you can't touch it, right? You can't make adjustments to it.
That's some great advice, and that probably throws up some roadblocks for people when they've got the wrong mindset, like how you mentioned going for the big things before you take the small wins, and get that momentum and success. And I think that's where people need to see this as a journey, not just buying a shiny tool off the shelf to solve all the world's problems. As soon as you switch it on, it's
No, that's 100% right. And I think that's where we see people that are really successful is they do those things in parallel. So they do go after the onboarding and offboarding first, but then they're also a bunch of running some, like I would say, just less complex workflows that they're getting in their environment. So they're seeing it, they're seeing success, they're seeing how it works and the difference that it makes in the business.
and it's an investment, isn't it? That's the it's like you've said, it's a time investment, it's a mindset change. If we're going on this journey, it's an operational transformation, in how we
That's
go about
absolutely
it.
right.
And this is where I'm seeing in the more mature MSPs that are growing, they're investing more in having more DevOps people than they are hiring help desk people, and
Yep.
it's a big shift in the way that they operate and what they're focused on. And to your point before, around that sort of competition down the road. If you don't have processes, you're not utilizing automation. If we're doing the same things, charging the same price, who's making the better margins? And as prices are getting commoditized, who can absorb the margin squeezes more? The people that are generating more, or the ones that are already scrimping by? So it's a bit of a need and an urgency to start getting on this journey, because it's not fast. Like, how if you've seen your, say, smaller, more successful partners that have utilized Rewst, what's sort of their journey to start really seeing ROI and continued growth of that ROI? Is it a 1 month process, 6, 12, 18 months? What's sort of the journey length?
I think it varies, but I'd say our onboarding is 90 days. We've reduced that probably to half of that. Everybody. This is one of the interesting things about this is anybody that kind of knows the MSP space, we kind of look at everyone will talk about it, especially the higher up guys in a vendor relationship, right? They'll say, oh, we got to go after the bigger guys, right? You don't want to, but we're seeing a lot of smaller guys that, either they came from an MSP, they started up, so they're still very kind of hands-on technical, and they're looking at it saying, I need to grow my business a certain way. I'm never going to do it by hiring a bunch of people. So we had some guy that came in, went through the training in a week, and then built and leveraged some of the pre-built stuff, and had 9 automations working in a week's time. And so he's looking at it like, without this, it's going to take me so long to grow the way I need to grow and to find the right people that I know I'm never going to do it. So it really depends on a person. And I think, to your point, it depends on their commitment. So we are certainly committed. We are, MSP only. So we're not working in a bunch of different channels. We're not working in enterprise. We are focused on MSP. And so, that's our mantra, is to just work with our partners to make them successful in the platform.
It's interesting you're talking about those sort of new next generation startups that are going about the game a whole different way. Um, that whole point of not having to hire people, I think it's the dream. We always joke around not having employees, but for an established business that does have employees, have you seen pushback on this sort of automation generally, or is it generally well accepted in the industry, and people love it and embrace it?
I think early on, people assumed, which, frankly, you could say this for everything, that, well, if I go with automation, then I'm going to be out of a job. And so I think that is something that, people, thought about. And I think if you talk to, probably some of the business owners, they'd say the same thing. And I think we really look at it as the opposite, where it puts you in a position to really, you're going to be able to, save time and make money just by putting these efficiencies in. But it's going to put you in a position where, if you get really good at automation, we have some of our partners that now are going and automating their end customers. So they're using that as an additional revenue stream to optimize their actually partner's business, as opposed to just optimizing the MSP.
It's huge when you can transform that into an offering. Clients will pay big dollars for this kind of stuff. It's very easy to sell the ROI, isn't it? On
No,
this kind of work.
absolutely. And I think that's what, those are some of the things that we try to be upfront about. It's the same thing about process. Like, we can't automate a process that doesn't exist, right? So, like I said, it doesn't have to be a big formal process, but you at least need to walk through what you want the outcome to be and how you're going to get there.
When you're going through this transformation and this sort of journey, uh, starting out, you'll see some quick wins. What do you need to do once you get past that quick win stage? We've got the champion in play. Um, what sort of person do you need as a champion? What are you looking for?
Yeah, I think and we have a list of, like, even a job. We've been asked to put together a job description for an automation engineer. So we've had a bunch of partners that said, this is so important. We're gonna carve this out because we know we'll get payback in short order in doing that. I think it's just somebody that does have. It's mostly to have the time, right? And if they aren't technical, it's just conceding that to know that they may need to have other resources that they leverage to be successful. The biggest thing for us is we want you to go through our training. So we have a training offering. It's Cluck University. So Rewst is, as we say, an excellent partner to the MSP space. We're and if you anybody see our logo, we have a bird as a logo. His name's Stuart. But Cluck University or Cluck U, and you could go through there. You could do basically live trainings. You could basically do your own pace trainings. But that's only one thing. We have a robotics operations center, or ROC. That's our support that will manage basically things like, we have 65 different integrations with MSP centric vendors like Pax8. So if Pax8 ever makes a change to the API, we have a team that's looking at that. If that breaks, we'll go fix it to make sure that your automations are working well. And then, I think the thing that I personally think is the coolest is we have a open mic once a week, and the CEO and founders usually on that, the CTO, and being on the sales side, it's frightening because there's no script to it, and we don't we don't manage the people's questions, right? This is very open, and the other thing that we've seen wild success is people that get on that, they see all of their either friends or even MSPs that are going in there, and they're walking through what they've built. So it just shows you, where you are from a level standpoint, and how easily these people are talking about success after being on board for a couple of months. And a lot of it is, as you know, because Pax8's, a big community-driven partner, is community is awesome for us. We love our community. So, we have Discord. Everyone spends a ton of time on Discord. It's a way that you could access our support team. So there's a bunch of tools that we put in place to give you the ability to be successful here.
I love that community part. Being in the industry for so long, it still amazes me how willing everyone is to share. Well, not really competitors, but like throwing it out there to the industry of the awesome stuff that have done, so we help each other, so we don't have to reinvent the wheel. It's just amazing. And when you were saying that, my first thought was, what's the most creative automation that you've seen? Like, you must have seen some really, really awesome stuff.
I'd say the thing that just blew me away, and it has nothing to do with work, but it winds up giving the guy more time, is he basically built an automation that told him when Steam games were on sale, and he was able to put in the level of discount he was looking for. So he would automatically get a trigger. It would send him an email, and it would tell him, yeah, these two games are on sale. Like, these guys wind up almost, leveraging this as like as a game for them. They're getting in it. They're getting stuck in it. They're trying to see what they could do. But it is interesting. The things that we're doing do wind up helping things like, truing up licensing between the PSA and between Pax8. So just making sure, so these are things that they could go back to their management team and say, look, we found out that we're saving $500 a month because we had licenses that we're not billing out on. It's amazing. Every Wednesday we release what we call, it's Workflow Wednesday. So it's just partners. It's not anything that we do. You could go in and you could see those every Wednesdays to see how creative the folks can get.
Oh, yeah, we can be quite a creative industry when we put our mind to it. And that's probably going back to your point around the needing to know what the processes are, because if you don't know what your outcomes are, you can automate rubbish too. It can be rubbish in, rubbish out, can't it?
Yeah, and I think that's where the community helps, and certainly like our rock team, and on onboarding team as you're going through it, is everybody's real helpful with making sure that we're learning from each other's mistakes, which isn't always the case in life. Especially anybody who has kids knows that. But certainly, just making sure that we're learning from each other's mistake, and it's interesting to see how people have no problem working with somebody they've never met before to help them, work through and to solve something.
This is a fascinating topic for me, and we could talk for ages about this, but we've gone over quite a lot of different topics and areas. What do you want people to take away from this conversation if it's just one thing?
I'd say, the one thing is to embrace automation. I think it's something that is certainly going to help your business, going to make your life easier, and the one thing that we're here to do at Rewst is we're here to walk you through it. Doesn't always mean that what we're doing is the best solution for you, but we're here about educating the community on how they can leverage automation to be successful in their MSP.
If you're there, you want to embrace automation, what's sort of the first steps that you'd recommend people take?
So if you want to do it, I'd say certainly you could reach out to us. We'll kind of walk you through it, at least show you what we have to offer as you're looking through it. And then you can go to our YouTube channel. You could see a bunch of the stuff that people have built. And these are not like professional grade that we went out and built them. Like these are stuff that people have been kind enough to put together to share with their colleagues in the MSP space.
It's awesome. I think this has been such a useful conversation, and I hope the people listening along have gotten a lot out of it, because I know I mentioned it before, but if you're not automating and you're not managing your margins with the services that you're providing, other people are out there, and like you said, the next generation are starting from this platform straight away. They're going out, they're automating as much as possible. They're running leaner, they're more agile, they're focusing on the highest and best use activities they can have. So if you're starting out, or if you're more established, it's definitely something that I think is critical to transforming into a more mature solutions partner, and elevating yourself up the chain, giving you the more time and headspace to actually talk to your clients in a different way, instead of worrying about the reacting to the tickets of today and yesterday. So I really appreciate your time, Charlie, and no doubt I'll have you back in the future, and we'll talk about more exciting things around automation and what the partners are doing out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I definitely appreciate your time, and I think you're absolutely spot on when you talk about yeah, you could definitely be a bit apprehensive about it, and you could have concerns. Definitely reach out and see how we could work through those concerns. But things are happening, right? We unfortunately we can't stop how things are going to evolve, right? So I think a lot of times, you just need some help embracing it.
Well, it's some great last advice, and thank you for all your wisdom today. I really appreciate it, and I look forward to having you back next time.
Thank you. Appreciate